With 30,000 people confined, with more than 60,000 Spaniards evacuated, with a national emergency, Sánchez leaves everything and goes on vacation. And he looks very calm. It seems like he almost knows how the fire is going to develop. Well, maybe he even does know.
The land use cannot be changed for 30 years if the forest has burned. But there are some exceptions, and those exceptions are if it is a matter of public interest. And all these things that are actually nonsense are considered to be of public interest, because public interest is about heating, not about energy that, well, is burning the forest, because these companies need those areas to install solar panels.
The forest is burning because of excessive statism. It's exactly the opposite of what Sánchez says. I'm a biologist with a specialization in ecology, and I also served with the Generalitat Fire Service. The worst years were 1978, 1985, 1989, and 1994. Right, when we had 1 degree less. Another fact. Did you know that state-managed forests burn twice as much as forests managed by private owners?
I think it's time for us to start reflecting on the need to regain freedoms and take powers away from the state. This might sound politically incorrect, but I don't care. And I think it's time for us to start disobey some rules. And to do it in a peaceful way, to do it in a rational way. Explaining why we're disobeying some of the decisions our terrible and negligent politicians make.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon. Welcome. How are you, Confidentials? Strength, honor, and thank you for staying with us, even though many of you are on vacation or traveling. Well, we're still here, and we'll keep slowing down a bit in August, but we'll keep going. Thank you for your trust. You can't just go on vacation for 5 weeks. There's a lot of current news to tell you about, and there are traps that the government of Spain often sets up when you're not paying attention to it. Sánchez can go, though. Sánchez has just gone on vacation for 5 weeks. The longest ever taken by a prime minister in the history of Spain. He went to La Mareta, or you can turn yourselves off. He invites his mother, his father, his corrupt brother, his wife under investigation. Begoña Gómez could get 13 years, and maybe Salvador Illa and some others too. This time Zapatero won't be having lunch or dinner at the state's expense, because this year Zapatero isn't leaving his little house. Well, his big house with a pool near Madrid. He won't be going to Lanzarote. He doesn't want to be seen much on the street either. His ears must be burning from how much people talk about him. With 30,000 people confined, with more than 60,000 Spaniards evacuated. With a national emergency, Sánchez drops everything and goes on vacation. And he looks very calm. It seems like he practically knows how the fire is going to develop. Well, maybe he even does know. Because it's not normal to have 800 active fires at the same time in 15 days. And that's what we've suffered over the last 2 weeks in Spain. Although we've had a few years now where this situation is starting to become normal, it wasn't like this before. Every time he's asked, it's climate change, it's as if there's a plan to harm the countryside, right? With the help of Mercosur from the European Union, allowing any Spanish-speaking Latin American country to sell their products here, sometimes at a lower price. With bureaucratic rules and paperwork that make it impossible even to plant a hectare of onions. They make it so hard that many people give up. Of course, there are taxes everywhere and unfair competition too, especially from our neighbor, Morocco. It's like pushing rural people and livestock farmers to abandon their farms, to go to the city and collect welfare, to make them do something else. There are projects planned for those lands, Yesterday, we talked about wind turbines, green energy centers, photovoltaic panels. There are projects that this government cares more about. He goes on vacation for 5 weeks after doing what he does best, lying. Yesterday, in a press conference that was hard to listen to because of so many lies, one after another, he said a lot of nonsense that I'll spare you from, but there's one I have to mention so he doesn't take us for fools. It's the moment when he puts on that look of a man in love, a poor victim of a society that doesn't understand him. And he talks about his wife, about when they met. Please listen.
Begoña Gómez and I met when we were 30 years old. She left her company, and she did it to avoid any conflict of interest.
Poor Begoña Gómez, right? How unfair we've been to her. She left her job so it wouldn't interfere with her business, right? The fact of being Sánchez's wife? I told you it was all a lie. This one is especially cruel. First, because it forgets about Begoña's past in gay saunas and prostitution, and it only mentions the company where the Inmark group worked. Second, because Begoña left Inmark to make high-flying deals. Of course, with Google, with La Caixa, with insurance companies, inviting the rector of Complutense University to Moncloa for a coffee, that is taking advantage of who she was thanks to her husband. And third, because even about the company where she worked, she lied every step of the way. Look, Begoña Gómez did not leave the company Inmark in 2018. No. And Inmark, by the way, is a company dedicated to market research. They sent a lot of young people to do surveys on the street, to recruit members for the Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, for any NGO that paid them for it. And if you didn't get at least 3, 4, or 5 a day, you didn't get paid at the end of the month. One of those who worked for Begoña Gómez is our colleague and friend, the journalist Alberto Sotillos, the son of Eduardo Sotillos. He told us about it here.
Well, I work really hard now. It was a temp agency. I don't know if that kind of temporary employment company still exists with, well, the worst working conditions you could have. But anyway, it was one of those first jobs with a ton of hours. It was about recruiting members. There was a fixed part, a ridiculously low base salary. It didn't even reach 1,000 euros. I'm not sure it even hit 800. The base was extremely low. Yeah, I know.
The base was 200 and something.
Yeah, very, very low. I know everything depended on your ability to recruit members. And after a certain number of members, you started to receive bonuses. So you needed to reach a minimum. If I remember correctly, it was 7 members per week with a minimum amount of money to get, well, of course, not to reach 1,000 euros, but at least to get close. And from there, logically, to keep going up, the average.
Per day, if they required you to keep working, how many people did you have to recruit per day?
Ultimately, it depended on you. There was a weekly minimum.
How much was it?
I don't know. If I remember correctly, 4 or 5. But of course, if you could, theoretically, you could not get any members and nothing would happen to you. Another question is if they'll renew your contract.
In that company, Begoña Gómez worked for almost 20 years. And yes, she officially stopped working when Sánchez arrived at the Moncloa Palace, but she didn't stop being a shareholder of the company. Yes, she had a percentage of shares. And what happened until June 2022, which is when she gave up the shares and sold them? What happened? Well, she got a government contract from her friend Nadia Calviño, the Minister of Economy. The company Inmark got a government contract from the Ministry of Transport, from the now imprisoned José Luis Ábalos, from the Ministry of Industry, and from the Ministry of Labor. Look, in total, 4 ministries awarded up to 5 contracts to the company Inmark, and she was awarded a contract. And what percentage stake did she get? And Sánchez boasts, saying, my wife has made sacrifices. Well, if anyone wants to keep listening to lies, they can watch Channel 1, they can watch La Sexta, they can watch the fake press conferences of Pedro Sánchez where they won't hear a single truth. Luckily, Spaniards have learned to listen, to observe, to compare, and to draw their own conclusions. They are no longer fooled by words, gestures, and good or apparent intentions. Be vigilant. We are in the hands of a government that is not only corrupt, but a criminal mafia. Never forget that. It changes the rules. This is not just another corrupt person. This is the boss of the mafia that governs us. There's more. Welcome. We're investigating.
Yes.
Castillon Confidential by Albert Castillon. Gentlemen, yesterday, once again, the Prime Minister insisted that it's not true that we spread hoaxes. When we say that it's forbidden under penalty to collect pine cones, pick up branches, or clean the forest, well, he said that the forest law doesn't say that. In short, if someone doesn't do their job, it's the fault of the municipalities, the autonomous communities, or the farmers, the same farmers. That when there's a fire, they're called in a hurry to come with their tractors to make fire breaks. Sometimes in places where the harvest hasn't been collected yet, even if it means losing everything, and they do it. What's happening? Why is the government using and manipulating information? That's the worst part. Victor Viziedo, you already know him, president of the Association of Independent Farmers. I hope it doesn't happen to you, Victor.
Well, the truth is that our fields don't catch fire. I mean, the cultivated area doesn't catch fire. What catches fire is, unfortunately, what isn't taken care of and therefore is in bad condition. They're real dry wastelands. And when a fire starts, because of the amount of fuel there is, they're impossible to put out. There's more and more fuel precisely because no one is taking care of them. In the past, they took care of themselves because there was a large rural population. Specifically, in 1960, they made up 67% of the population, while now only 16% of the population lives in towns with fewer than 10,000 inhabitants. Obviously, all these people used to live off nature, and since nature has stopped being profitable, they've left the villages for the cities. That lack of profitability is also the politicians' fault.
But Victor, we've been driven out, we've been pushed out of the countryside. I mean, bureaucracy, paperwork, Mercosur, competition, taxes. Farmers tell me that to plant onions or potatoes, they have to prepare technical reports, send who knows how many things with a digital signature. I mean, it's crazy when the rural population has an average age that's more analog than digital. Everything gets really complicated for you, right?
That's right. The bureaucracy keeps increasing. Let's not forget they want to control everything with a digital logbook, and we're not prepared for that. We're older people, many aren't used to computers, they need someone to handle the paperwork for them. Hiring an administrative agent costs more, and that control is precisely to reduce our fertilization that we need for our fields to produce. So all of this is crazy, isn't it? And also to control us regarding chemicals, the issue of crop protection chemicals. Hey, we need plant medicines so our plants stay healthy. No, we're not going to waste either one or the other because it costs us money out of our own pockets. Everything we use is because we need it. Well, that's where we have the bureaucracy of the digital logbook to control absolutely everything. It's called Agenda 2030.
Yeah, so basically you're not needed. For them, people like you are unnecessary, and in your place, what will they put? A photovoltaic installation? A wind turbine? That's it.
Don't have the slightest doubt about it because, to take just one example, when the forest catches fire, it's because there's an interest behind it. Let's not forget that 89% of fires are caused by humans and the rest by nature. And of those, approximately 60-something% are intentional. That is, there is an interest behind each fire. And what is that interest? Well, simply put, it's that biomass is cheaper. In other words, those burned logs are cheaper for companies that work in the biomass sector, in biomass energy, or simply as lumber companies. And then we also have the issue of photovoltaic plants, wind farms, green hydrogen, which will also come to us, and so on. That is considered to be of public interest. And in the forestry law, Article 50, what it says is that you can't change the land use for 30 years, the use of the forest, if it has been burned. But it makes some exceptions, and those exceptions are if it is a matter of public interest and they are considered to be of public interest. All these things which are actually nonsense because public interest is heating, not energy. What's happening is, the forest is burning because these companies need those areas to put in solar farms.
And that is to say,
as long as they're forests, they're going to reject the project because of the environmental report. This way, they won't reject it anymore.
Yes, it's obvious. For every lie they tell, or half-truth, like the one you just mentioned, there's the reality of what actually happens. When you go to any of those search tools from Maldita, etc., and ask, can a burned piece of land be rezoned? They say no, nobody mentions the exception you just told me about for that type of structure. Do you think this is a plan? Do you think there's a plan to burn areas? Yes, don't smile.
Answer me. No, it's just that yes, there is. No, there is no plan. I have no doubt at all because this plan has been in place since the moment community preference was violated, a basic principle of the European Union, by signing indecent trade agreements with countries that then flood your market with surplus goods. Yes, there is, because they're constantly imposing green restrictions on you, while in those countries, those green restrictions don't exist. And yes, there are, when it turns out you can't clean ravines, you can't clean up the forest, you can't do anything because you need authorization for everything. So, hey, do you really need authorization for a herd to enter an area so that the herd can graze? Do you really need it to remove a fallen log that's rotting? Do I really need authorization from the Kukar Hydrographic Confederation in my case? Because that's the one we have here. If the tree is in a ravine, just to be able to remove that log. And I have to draw up plans showing how I have to get in and how I'm going to remove it. Yes, I have to make some plans showing where I have to access, where I'm going to remove it from. I have to draw up a plan just to remove a damn log. I really have to write a report for the natural park, assuming it was here in the desert of Las Palmas. Careful. Because natural parks are the ones most likely to catch fire. This natural park right next to me, the desert of Las Palmas, is a mess. I've known it since childhood and it's never been worse. Why? Because it's not cared for like it used to be. Now it's not taken care of. So now they can tell us whatever stories they want, that the forest law doesn't prohibit it. Of course it doesn't prohibit it. The forest law even requires it in its Article 48. It says that the owners of the forests have to clean their forests. But what happens? Then there are other articles like 36 and 37 that create a whole bunch of problems and restrictions for forest use. So, of course, the owner of the forest says, I'm not interested in this. I'll just leave the forest abandoned. I don't want anything to do with it. I don't use it. They won't let me use it. And there it stays. And then there are a series of articles that talk about fines for picking pine cones, picking branches, collecting brush. Of course, they fine you because it's stated in the forest law. The violations are listed in Article 67. Read them. In Article 67C, for example, it says that anyone who cuts, burns, or collects firewood, even collects firewood without authorization. So you have to ask for authorization for this to collect firewood from the underbrush. Or, for example, Section F, I think it is, which says that a fine will be imposed on any livestock that enters a forest to graze and so on without authorization. That is, and as you read all the little letters, you see that without authorization in the forest, you can't do anything. If authorization also needs approval from the natural park management, we're screwed. They won't give it. Okay? And on top of all this, you have to keep in mind that not all the forest is private. Private forest makes up 63% and public forest is the rest. 37% in public forest, nobody does anything either. And that public forest belongs to the state and to the local councils. But what happens? Well, it's the budget. Remember, we were talking about the budget the other day, the one that was returned, right? Well, in 2002, there were 357 million euros for fire prevention. And today, this year, there are 175 million, less than half. If we've reduced the budget and on top of that, we return it to the state's coffers, as we saw the other day, who's going to spend it? No one. Nothing can be carried out. There's no money to spend.
It's terrible. Gentlemen, the forest will keep burning because of these reasons, not because of climate change. And when they tell you it's not true, yes, it is true. And there are laws that reaffirm everything we're saying here. They're the ones who are lying because we believe there's a plan, a sinister plan, and we have to be on the defensive against it and be active about it. Visiero, we're in touch because this isn't over. A big hug.
A big hug, Albert, and I'm sorry I'm not out in the countryside right now, which is nicer.
I hope so. A hug. Castillon Confidential.
Confidential?
By Albert Castillon.
We'll be waiting for you at the home of sparkling water, Vichy Catalan.
Gentlemen, do you know what's great about this show? That a legion of people listen to it in a bunch of countries. So when we mess up, everyone finds out. Yes, when we make a mistake too. But when we need collaboration, there are insiders in the most unexpected corners you can imagine. Yesterday, we explained here with guests that Spain bought 8 Russian helicopters, Kamov models. They're the best for fighting fires. They can carry an incredible amount of water. And all 8 are grounded because no parts have been bought because there are restrictions with Russia. Political restrictions. However, in Portugal, they are using them. Why? Because in an urgent case like fires, they ignore the restrictions. It's curious that Sánchez, who doesn't listen to Trump at all, sometimes listens to him so much, right? Well, what we reported here about the famous come-off of those 8 helicopters sitting idle in a garage has been confirmed by Oscar Confidential.
I wanted to confirm what has been said about the come-off the Russian helicopter. I worked for years at Infoca in the Andalusian community, and every time we saw that the come-off helicopter managed by the ministry at Moraima flew to a fire, that fire was immediately extinguished. It has a load capacity, as you mentioned, that's quite large, and on top of that, an incredible maneuvering ability, aside from the pilot's experience. And unlike the Foca, which is what we call the seaplanes, the speed at which it can go to refill anywhere is much greater than that of a seaplane.
I'm telling you, with the 8 Kamov helicopters, many of the fires that are still burning today and have been going for almost a week would have already been put out. Well, we have other testimonies like this one because if nothing else, this space is now dedicated to telling you the truth about what others don't talk about, which I believe is our duty. My dear Jose Luis Rancaño, how are you, my friend? How's it going?
Albert, well, I'm very happy to be here with you and your sources, and I want to congratulate you again for yesterday's show, Albert. I already told you in private that it was an excellent, exceptional show. Congratulations. And I also want to congratulate Lieutenant Colonel Vendala and Guillermo Rocafort for their excellent contributions. It's a shame that our fellow countrymen, Albert, can't enjoy shows like yours, like the one we had yesterday, on Prank Time and through major national programs, which was deeply educational, and I hope that today we can complete it.
I'm sure today will be even better, and don't doubt it. If any government put us, for example, on Spanish television to do this, we wouldn't last a week because we would go after that government the very next day. You and I would be the first ones. So no, they will never want us. I don't expect that anymore. I hope to keep growing here where I'm much freer. There's a woman who's in Colombia. People know her and like her a lot. She worked in firefighting for the Catalan government years ago when she was pregnant with her daughter at the fire department headquarters of Catalonia. My dear Pilar Almagro from Bogota, how are you?
Hi, how are you, Albert? Hi, how are you, Jose Luis? Confidenciales. Jose Luis, well, we have set the bar high. Let's see if we can match it. Yes, yes.
Man, for sure, even better today. Hey, Pilar, what did you do there? You faced real fire, right?
I faced real fire in a private capacity. I've dealt with fires from the Central Control Center of Catalonia's Regional Fire Service, yes, for years. And it coincided with the Great Montserrat Fire. Do you remember?
Yes, yes.
Gigantic. It will take 50 years for the forest to recover.
Well,
Let's start with data because you're our numbers person. You don't do anything without first checking that it's true and looking for sources. You have that professional background. I have a journalistic one, and I love that you have it because you help us. Just yesterday, Sánchez repeated this again. Listen to him, please.
I want to express to all political actors, to all regional, provincial, and local governments that climate denial is the worst kind of fuel in the face of the climate emergency, and that denying reality and the warnings from science does not prepare us. On the contrary, it makes us much more vulnerable and our population much less secure.
Saying that climate change is not what causes these fires, for him and for many people in Spain, is climate denialism, and we are the fuel that ignites the fire. Have you looked at the number of fires in recent years?
Yes, I mean, what kills is overregulation of the forest due to excessive statism. It's exactly the opposite of what Sanchez says. I'm a biologist with a specialization in ecology, and I've also been with the Catalan Fire Service. We are the country with the second largest forest area in Europe, only behind Sweden, which people tend to forget. Many people think we're a desert. No, we're second only to Sweden in forest area. And there's a graph that I made myself. I said, okay, let's see how much the temperature has increased in the last 100 years. It has increased by 1.2 degrees in 100 years, and let's look at the hectares.
1.2 degrees in 100 years in Spain.
In Spain, exactly 1.2 in a century.
All right.
And now let's look at the fires per year, the hectares burned per year, and let's see if there's a correlation. The worst years have been 1978, 85, 89, and 94. How much did we have when it was 1 degree lower? How much did we have when it was 1 degree less? I mean, the correlation is 0.0. There is no correlation. That's a fact. Then how much? Another fact. Well, that's definitive. I mean, with just that alone, everything Sanchez says is absolutely false, and he knows it. Another fact. Did you know that state-managed forests burn twice as much as those managed by private owners? I'll give you the data. 72% of the forests in Spain are privately owned, and they account for 57% of the burned area. 28% of the forests in Spain are public, and they account for 43% of the burned area. First grade math, it's double. And it's double even though private owners aren't allowed to manage their forests. They get hit with regulations and fines, both Spanish and European. I mean, incredible. Those are the facts, but I have more, so we'll talk later.
All right. You'll give me more facts, but how do you feel about this, Ranchaño?
I just want to reinforce Pilar's point, which is excellent. I totally agree with her that statism in the countryside kills. Well, Pilar, statism kills in all sectors, not just in the countryside. But I want all the news outlets to keep in mind that this speech by Sanchez is a political speech from the radical left to disguise what is bad management. I use the word bad. Not to use the word I really should, which is negligent, even sometimes criminal. It's simply using an ideological argument to disguise what is criminal mismanagement. Look, Albert, the reality is that there is a policy not only national. When I say national, I mean state, regional, local, but also European, to put an end to the countryside, or at least to end it as our parents and grandparents knew it. There are aggressive regulations against farmers, ranchers, and against the men and women who have been fishing for years in all sectors and at all levels. This has led to Spanish villages, starting from the 60s and 70s, especially the late 70s, losing people who, due to migration, came to the big cities. In other words, the villages were abandoned. Almost all our forests are abandoned. There are no people left. I always say the same thing because a firefighter told me, cities don't burn. Where there are people, it doesn't burn. Fires happen where there is abandonment. And this policy is ongoing. And then there's something you mentioned that I want to point out because they accuse us of this. No, of course, the forest law requires clearing and cleaning the forests. But it's a deceptive law, like all the laws of this system or establishment. It says cleaning the forest is mandatory, but in reality, it makes it impossible. That is, you can't clean the forest because when you start to clean it, you can't because you can be penalized for it, because you have to ask for authorization, because it costs you money, because one part is forbidden, another part isn't, because you have to ask for advice. That is, it's a falsehood. And it must be clear that this policy is not just a party policy. In this case, I want to be clear. This policy has been supported by the two major Spanish political parties for years, the Socialist Party and the Popular Party. And then, if you want, Albert, we can talk about the resources. About why the state hasn't used or bought the Eco-Fire, which, by the way, is an invention by one of our fellow countrymen. We talk about why the CAMOS is not being used, and we talk about what is starting to be called the fire business. And later, if you want,
we can. Well, gentlemen, billions are spent on putting out fires. Last year, 2025, 7.5 billion were used to put out fires. So far this year, 2.5 billion. Let's see if there are people who are interested in it burning because it's a big business. Pilar, I need more data than what you promised me, please.
Well, in 2018, there were more water bombers than today. Exactly when Sánchez comes in, what a coincidence. And the rural depopulation, 84% of the national territory is rural. What is the percentage of the population in that 84%? 16%. That's what José Luis has done. Where there are people, there are no fires.
There are no fires?
Because they take care of it. But in this case, it's also that the laws, as you said, prevent you from taking care of it. Look, there was Law 7 of 2022 from the Ministry of Ecological Transition that even prohibited burning the stubble you removed from the field. The uprising, let's say, from the people in the countryside was so strong that they had to withdraw it months later. But they told you that to burn stubble, you had to follow the regulations. I don't know, as if you were Repsol trying to dispose of waste from a petrochemical plant. You say, well, and then there's the forest law. The forest law has fines of up to 1 million, yes. And as José Luis says, he knows this firsthand. He made the documentary about the FOS. The FOS committed suicide because it couldn't take it anymore. That's our example. It couldn't take it anymore. So the forest law, you say, okay, I'm going to clear this. I'm going to use the firewood. You have to hire a licensed engineer. You have to spend a lot more money than you're going to make. You say, okay, fine, I'll bring in goats to clean that up for me. You'll be in trouble if you bring in goats because you have to go through the same process. In my village, where I lived for years, in the smallest village in Catalonia, with about 20-something registered inhabitants, but really only 4 living there all year round. The mayor, because it's a village with a mayor, wanted to have 12 goats to make cheese. For himself, for his family, which is a big family, but they didn't let him. I wanted to put up a small awning at my house inside my property, which didn't face any street or anything. They didn't let me. They don't let you live, they don't let you breathe, they suffocate you. And later, Albert, I'd like to share some thoughts about Elinor Ostrom. Elinor Ostrom studied this for 40 years.
Also, we'll do that. You were talking about Eco-Fire. I want you to listen to Maria Angeles and Maria from Brussels.
Why do the town councils, where the risk is everywhere, but the town councils and the people who own land, I've read somewhere that it costs 6 euros per liter. Okay, it's not cheap. They say water is free. It's not free either. But it's better to spend that than to let all this burn. I don't get it. The expenses, if you weigh them, I don't know.
They're going to do everything possible to make the product and the knowledge of how to make it disappear. When they talk about how wonderful this product is, how harmless it is, but how well it stops fire and so on and so on. and there are a lot of interest in making sure these things don't come to light.
Look, yesterday we had David, who is a firefighter in Badajoz. He is a friend of the inventor of EcoFire, who lives in Zaragoza. He asked him for help. They organized a lot after the fires in Extremadura. They arranged for each town to have a tank with 6,000 liters of EcoFire. And he offered it practically at zero cost. They called the UME to coordinate. Yesterday, for the shipments, they called the army, the military. Until today, no response. It's obvious that I keep thinking the worst, and I think we'll be right, Rancaño. There are interests in keeping it burning.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt that this has turned into the fire business and that there are economic interests preventing the best decisions from being made. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to go any further, Albert, but I stand by what I just said. There are economic interests preventing the best decisions from being made. Economic interests, I would say constraints, and that have been dragging on for a long time. EcoFire is not purchased by any public institution. And yet all the institutions that have a high level of fire incidents or a significant risk from fire are acquiring it. The effectiveness of EcoFire is approved, but it's a product that competes with the traditional techniques being used to put out fires. The same thing happens with helicopters. That is to say, Pilar knows that in a company, the people in charge who are supposed to be the most qualified, because if they don't generate great value for their shareholders, for their employees, and for society itself, they get fired, they're let go, they're not allowed to hold those positions of responsibility. They should be making the best decisions. What is the best material to extinguish a fire? Which are the best firefighting planes or the best helicopters to put out fires? Those are the ones we should hire. But I would go further to the response protocols because I want to focus on how things are being done. And here I want to call out the dam structure. Structura of Spain, divided into I don't know how many regions with I don't know how many local powers. Fires don't care about regional governments. A fire can start in Avila, end up in Madrid, and even spread to the autonomous community of Castilla-La Mancha. There should be a coordinated national response, regardless of whether there are action protocols, faster response protocols, whether they're local or regional. But this is a problem, which, by its very definition, should be handled in an organized national way. And by fire professionals, not by the military. The UME is not a unit prepared to put out fires. And it behaves exactly as if we were facing some kind of pandemic. You defined it perfectly yesterday. What they do is set up a safety perimeter to prevent some villages from burning, to avoid fatalities, but the forest is left to burn. The fire is not fought. No, the fire must be fought. It must be fought with professional firefighters. What do I mean, Albert? I'll finish. We have the most incompetent people in charge because we have politicians in charge. Politicians who don't suffer for their terrible management, for their negligent, and as I've said before, criminal actions. There are no consequences. The consequences of bad management by politicians fall on all other citizens except themselves. The right decisions are never made, neither in prevention nor in management.
I want you to listen to a neighbor from the Valley of Tietar. She is illustrating what Jose Luis is saying. A lot of smoke, a lot of people, but they are alone.
I'm here to ask for help. Help from anyone. If I have to move however I can through the Tietar Valley, this can't be happening. I can't stop crying. But my neighbors, the 4 who have stayed in the village, are mobilizing, making fire breaks. No one shows up there. Mayor Beatrice is there helping us. She doesn't abandon the village. But we need help no matter what. They have to send something. Not a single helicopter has shown up. Not one. Not even a small plane. Nothing shows up.
Gentlemen, yesterday here, Rocafort and Vendala were defending and supporting the people who weren't leaving, who weren't going to the sports center. I'm referring to young people, not the elderly or sick, who were organizing themselves. The young people who were organizing themselves, please, with mayors, with firefighters, with some professional in charge. No, not just running around with a broom. Those people are scared. They are saving a lot of towns, forests, and hectares in Spain, and they have prevented them from burning. Many more than some members of the UME. There's an audio recording that has spread like wildfire. I don't know if it's completely true, but I have a feeling it is. Listen.
This morning, someone managed to get to Casavieja by motorcycle using trails because they weren't allowed to go by car. They took the trails and went all the way to the Casavieja pool, the pool that's at the top part of the town. And there, he says he found 100 firefighters sitting with their phones. He says, well, maybe they're resting, and a few trucks parked. He took a trail, went up, searched for the fire, and reached the path. He kept going until he found it, saying there's no one here. The fire was coming down slowly, because why was it coming down? He turns around, goes back down, and a patrol from the Forest Service stops him, and my friend says, do you know where the fire is? He says, no, but what are those people doing down there? He says, no, we have orders not to do anything. And he runs into the police and asks them, hey, the Forest Service told me that, hey, no, they have orders not to do anything. He says, they're not going to do anything. He continues down to the civil guard station where many civil guards are present and meets a friend from Gavilanes who is a sergeant. He approaches him, starts a conversation, and asks, hey, the forest rangers and police said you were ordered not to act. He replies, yes, and what I'm about to tell you is even worse. He says, yes, we have orders not to do anything, and we have orders to evacuate the villages so that people don't see that we're not doing anything.
Let's see, Pilar, since you're an expert on what we're talking about, have we reached the point of moving witnesses away so they don't record scenes like this with their phones? Yes.
Look, what's happening is happening because they want it to happen. And allow me to go back to Rancayo's last words. The resource is taken care of when it's managed by someone who owns it and suffers its consequences. And politicians don't manage it because they're not the owners and they don't suffer its negative consequences, only the positive ones. As we were saying, the forest managed by the state suffers exactly twice as many fires as the one managed by private individuals, even though they're hardly allowed to manage it. And here, Albert, I'd like to bring in Ostrom because that's her conclusion. Well, look, Eleanor Ostrom was the first woman ever to win the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2009, and she spent 40 years studying how shared resources are managed all over the world. 40 years. She also studied those in Spain. And she said that the tragedy of the commons by Hardin was a biologist, he said, look, when something is communal, everyone tries to take advantage to get the most benefit. And so there are only two solutions. Either it is managed by an owner or it is managed by the state. So Ostrom said, okay, let's see what happens if the state manages it. Well, she said that the tragedy of the commons is not inevitable. As long as the communal good, for example, the lands of a village, the forests of a village, the waters of an area, as long as that communal good is managed by those private individuals who are its own users. And in Spain, we have two very clear examples. One is the Water Tribunal of Valencia. It has been managing the waters for 1,000 years without any ministry. 1,000 years. And it runs smoothly. And another example which she studied is the Montes Vecinales Mano Común of Galicia. They are managed by the users themselves, the neighbors. They find the neighbor who doesn't stay on the path and so on. And it's managed wonderfully. In conclusion, as Arancaño said, resources are taken care of when they are managed by those who own them and suffer the consequences. And here, they don't let us do that.
And also, you see, what happens in Spain specifically, not only in Spain, but in Spain in an exaggerated way, is that the ideological element is so vile, so miserable that they're using the same tactics as during the flood. The radical left believes that any tragedy is a tool for playing politics and for bringing down their enemy. And they behave like such miserable people in these always tragic circumstances. I think it's easy to see that there are active firefighters who could come to help but aren't allowed to or are being held back in some way. We already experienced it during the flood. Members of the state security forces and bodies couldn't show up. There wasn't an active presence from the army as much as was needed, nor from special emergency forces like the firefighters. That element of vile politics is especially pronounced here. It's becoming very obvious that, by the way, our fellow countrymen are starting to notice, they're starting to realize that there are decisions that are strictly political. That thing about locking people down in their villages so the forest can burn freely and without any problems, while they keep people locked up in a, I don't know, in a school or in a gym. That's another thing. We'll talk about that too. I think it's a real shame.
Yesterday, in this regard, a message from the mayor of Navas del Rey aired on Onda Cero. Careful, because today we've received a counter reply from someone who has been a councillor on that town council. Let's listen to what the mayor said.
My municipality is still outside of here, and I'm surprised that it's full of television cameras. My neighbors are discovering, or will soon discover, that the town has burned on all sides through the television coverage. It can't be that they don't let the neighbors into their homes when they've lost everything and it's full of television cameras. It can't be. It's outrageous. And so we're outraged, we're pissed off.
This is what the mayor of Navas del Rey said, who's from a small party, and he used to belong to the PP. Well, we've received confidential messages from people who have been councillors on that town council and know the story. Specifically, his name is Ricardo. He says the first one to break it is him. In the town, there are 2 fire response vehicles with a capacity of 800 liters, a pickup and a van, both provided by the community of Madrid. Well, the first one is used by him just for himself, for getting around and running errands, and the van is used to transport the town hall staff. There is no civil protection or fire protection plan in Navas del Rey. In January of this year, it was approved that each municipality needed to have one. There isn't one there. What's more, a neighborhood association asked him 2 days earlier to put up prevention posters, which cost 40 euros, and he refused, saying it wasn't necessary. In other words, everyone has to deal with their own problems, and now he's acting like he's outraged. There's a lot of negligence and a lot of inefficiency too. I want you to listen to some messages because people are just as outraged as we are. Gemma, Diego, Javier, and Maria Emilia.
First, they've destroyed Spanish agriculture and livestock, little by little. They've been emptying the villages so that people move to the city. This way, they have people in closed-off areas, and they'll have everything for themselves, absolutely everything.
Is this still burning? I don't know. Here in Vigo, it's terribly hot today. Galicia's forests, I don't know if they've been cleared or not, but the risk is there.
I've seen the videos from you and me, how that man tells them, where are you going if the fire is right behind you? And then he leaves. They've been following illegal orders for a while now, the army and you and me too.
Years ago, there was the Helicona. In Helicona, all the forests were cleared. There were no fires. Of course, now nobody cares. Nobody cares. Why? Because they're burning everything to put wind turbines there, to put solar panels there, to destroy Spain. That's what they're doing.
Look, there's a PSOE poster going around on social media because, as Rancaño rightly said, the left always uses tragedies to play politics. Well, just ask Zapatero how he came to power. This is the poster you're seeing. State pact against the climate emergency. Look at the words they use. It's a national priority. They've taken the words national priority from Vox, made them their own, show a blazing fire, and say that the state pact is the priority. Pretty manipulative, right? I think it's unbelievable, Rancano.
As I mentioned earlier about the narrative about this so-called climate change, which is like the Duke of Alba for the people of the Netherlands, right? For everything and for any excuse. Notice the falsehood. I'll give you 2 facts. Almost certainly 90% of the fires are deliberately set. They don't even happen spontaneously. They're intentional. In other words, it has nothing to do with climate change. What happens is that the condition of the forest is so disastrous, so neglected, that uncontrollable fires occur. But 90%, some experts cite even higher figures, or a percentage above 90%. The amount of CO2 released into the atmosphere by these kinds of intense fires is impressive. That is, if they were really so concerned about climate change, they would already be taking the necessary preventive measures. The story is absolutely false. What is a national priority, Albert, is to get rid of this damn government once and for all. That is a real national priority, a national emergency. No doubt, I don't know what to call it.
No doubt, and what's worse, just until a few days ago, and even today, the People's Party, which is the one that will govern with, I hope, support from Vox and not with a majority, still buys into the climate change narrative. Pilar, they don't always deny it. Quite the opposite. They're starting to do it because of their agreements with Vox, but not all of them have worn the badge on their lapel.
Yes, they're social democrats. In the end, if we look at the whole map, it's a terrifying picture. It's a picture of squeezing citizens dry of control and dependence. Look, chat control. On July 9th, they voted urgently to continue controlling our private messages. I mean, they don't want us to have self-ownership. The digital euro, also this July, is moving forward and they want to implement it in 2029. Replacement isn't some absurd theory. It's that you can see it in all the online outlets in Marrakesh 2018 or the UN's 2020 replacement migration document. The fires, not cleaning up, not being able to survive without dependence. I mean, people from the countryside can survive. They could survive without needing a government there. Well, no. Emptying of rural areas, as we've said, and absolute dependence. I mean, you can't even use your private forests, your land, however you see fit. All of this within the map leads to the same thing. It's not just about removing the ones from here, Rancaño, but also the ones from Brussels. It's a plot against both the ones from here and the ones from Brussels. Or it's a plot, yes.
Just a plot. And you pointed out the situation on your show yesterday. Strange. These coincidences between vast burned areas and the appearance of large photovoltaic or solar installations. Yes.
But I can show you a dozen such installations, cases like that in 2 minutes. No, yes. It's not normal for there to be so many identical cases.
No, it's not normal. As you rightly pointed out the other day, I'm not an investigator. I don't have conclusive evidence that there's a connection. But I'm absolutely certain that when a fire breaks out, if there is any public interest regulation that allows any of these new schemes some multinationals use to enrich themselves, I would favor launching a criminal investigation.
Of course.
Led by the prosecutor's office itself. Why? Well, because there are too many coincidences. And in this case, we're talking about coincidences that have had a terrifying impact on the landscape and on the lives of many of our fellow countrymen. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean that I'm blaming or saying that these companies are setting the forests on fire. No, what I'm saying is that we have to act with absolute transparency and with full rigor and oversight in situations of this kind. And if you let me finish, there's one thing that, above all, excuse my language, really pisses me off. The point is, any company, big or small, any decent and honorable family with a father or mother leading the family, any person with heart, honor, and kindness does not abandon their life. Goes on vacation. You're a scoundrel, you're a miserable person. You can't go on vacation when Spain is burning on all sides. And don't claim you're in the same situation as everyone else, because you're not. You hold the highest office in Spain after the king, and we'll talk about him on another occasion. You can't abandon your responsibilities. The example you set, what you convey, is lethal, destructive. It goes against the traditional structure of our society and against all our values. Just for that decision, just for that one, you don't deserve to be in power for even one more second or to set foot on one of the steps of the Falcon that's going to take you on vacation.
I agree, I applaud, and we all agree, and we've started the Indignados España program with Spain in a state of national emergency. 80,000 people confined, displaced, or sheltering in a sports hall, and he's at La Mareta. Not just for a few days, no, 5 weeks. There hasn't been a more lethal action than that. Speaking of that relationship, photovoltaic farms, wind turbines, and infrared fires. First, check the official state gazette to find out where the forest will burn. Soon Diego and Victoria discuss it.
There are statements on social media from forest rangers and wildland firefighters saying they have explicit orders not to intervene. And they evacuate the towns near the fires so that the people don't see that they're not doing anything. The purpose of the well-known agenda that we all already know is to burn forests and crops, everything to install solar panels and wind turbines so that Spain becomes the battery of Europe.
It's not the most criminal thing to turn this country into a damn mirror all covered with solar panels. No, that's not outrageous, really.
They've sold Spain, and now it's only good for solar panels and wind turbines spinning around. We're going to fry. You'll see in the places with solar panels, since nothing is put there, it burns. That doesn't burn.
You know companies, I'm sure, that work on that, Pilar. Most of them are foreign funds, many from China, that come here to set up their biggest factories, for example, in energy storage in batteries. The biggest one is Valduxo, the one you're seeing now, so it's not that far away.
Look, I actually work in that. I mean, my company maintains wind farms and we also install and maintain solar panels, but it's like a hammer. A hammer can be used for something really good, like making a table, hammering in the nails and making a table, or it can be a means to kill the person next to you. It's about how you use the hammer. So having alternative energy sources is excellent. Excellent. We need a lot of energy because we've raised our standard of living. Another thing is to do it through the back door and use seemingly non-violent means like the official state gazette to completely crush society.
In fact, the blackout that happened was too, Pilar.
For mostly using this type of energy, it can't be.
Sure, but to begin with, do we really have to say that some photovoltaic panels are of public interest and therefore a burned land can be rezoned? Is it really in the public interest to install wind farms? Because there's little public interest, but a lot of private interest. Who makes the laws? Are they being influenced by the lobbies of these multinational companies? I have no doubt, right? No doubt.
The issue of public good could fill several of your shows. Yes, yes. Because how do we define a public good? For Sánchez, his vacations are a public good.
Right.
It's also public that we have to pay for them. And as Rancaño says, while your company is burning, well, no business owner or homeowner would go on vacation if their property was burning. They check what's happening and try to put out the fire quickly. No, for him, his skin, his rest, and his things are a public good, of course. And as always, let's remember that he is the president of the Socialist International. For him, a public good is bringing socialism to the whole world. So that's the heart of the matter. What is a public good?
Hey, but Pilar, and I don't want to get you into any trouble with your private businesses. On the contrary, I know how you are, I know how you work, and I would vouch for the way you do things. But do people talk about what we're discussing here in those companies? That coincidence, that link with the BOE, which in March, April, and May says no to a photovoltaic project over visual impact. Then it just burns and the project is reactivated. Do you all discuss this?
No, honestly, at my level, we don't talk about it, but those coincidences aren't really coincidences, obviously.
Yeah.
Thompson, and also Albert Pilar knows it perfectly well. I am a clear and unambiguous defender of the capitalist system and therefore of the business system in its purest form. That is a system where companies compete on equal terms. Large companies have monopolistic tendencies. They always have, and that's what the market is for, to prevent monopolistic tendencies. There's also a factor here, Albert, which is that it's not a coincidence. In many of these companies, there's a direct relationship with political leaders. You see, the board of directors or leaders are often the nephew, cousin, friend, or uncle of the politician in office. from the provincial council or autonomous community. That's why I say we have to be extremely transparent. We're not conspiring here against the progress of humanity or against the development of alternative energies. I want many of them to be developed in the future, and the cheaper and more powerful they are, the better for us. In fact, that's the progress of humanity, fighting against nature, not letting nature arbitrarily impose its forces on man. That's what we've been doing for a very long time. And therefore, I believe that's what we should maintain and defend. If what we're asking for is transparency, Albert, transparency in those behaviors.
So if there are doubts, and there are many of them, then an investigation should be opened. And I hope it happens after what we're experiencing this summer. Miguel, Rosa Maria, and Paco.
I saw Spain burning. I think it's the backlash from ZP. And with that, just like that, another smokescreen.
From Almeria, what has burned and the people who have died, may they rest in peace. They say those lands are set aside for solar panels. I don't know to what extent this whole scheme could be happening here. And about the fires, I don't know. Now they're talking about Madrid. Maybe it'll happen somewhere else. But from Zaragoza, everything we've been through is incredible.
I just heard Guillermo Rocafort now, who says there's another cesspool when it comes to fires and all that. Well, yes, it's true. That cesspool exists. And it's called Traxa, which handles wildfires in Spain.
Well, Traxa is a company, well, the one that used to hire Jessica, right? Among others, what can I tell you? The minister's prostitutes who ended up working there. Well, no, getting paid without working, which is, well, at least they didn't work at Traxa, they worked with the minister. That's another story. What do we tell people so they get up, open their eyes, and wake up, Ranchano? I don't want anyone to lose their life making a fire break. I do want the towns to organize with the local firefighters and mayors to stop the fire when those who should aren't doing it. How do we get that message across to be cautious but effective?
First of all, I want to bring back an idea from Pilar that I think is excellent, and I believe it's what we should do. We have to fight against this system that has been imposed on us, this totalitarian system. We have to regain areas of freedom. We have to start taking away powers from the state. We have to take responsibilities away from the state. We have to take away its capacity. We have to reduce its size. We have to keep shrinking it, making it smaller, leaving it only with what? Let's consider that we are still not ready as individuals or as free and equal citizens to be able to manage it ourselves under better conditions than they do. I believe that even those aspects that are always said to be purely state matters, like security and others like it, would be better managed in private hands. And we have to start doing it right now, Albert. What you were pointing out, we have to organize ourselves into communities across towns, in broader regions, in forming groups of neighbors who can organize themselves, who can make decisions, in starting to take a step forward. We must avoid being treated like sheep, like, hey, look, we take you all to the gym. We take you all. Well, there are safety measures that must be followed, but you'll have to explain to me why I can't defend my house, my belongings, and my property from the fire. But who are you to tell me that I have to stay 200 or 400 meters away watching my house burn down? If I have the ability and I've made the decision to try to defend it, to defend my property, my tradition, my belongings, why wouldn't I do it? I think it's time for us to start reflecting on the need to regain freedoms and take powers away from the state. What I'm about to say may be politically incorrect, but I don't care. And I think it's time for us to start disobeying, to disobey some rules and do it in a peaceful way, to do it rationally, explaining why we disobey some decisions made by our terrible and negligent politicians.
Do you agree, Pilar?
That's exactly what we're doing, word for word. Your channel, Albert, is about this. Statism kills, the forest burns because of too much statism. The minimal state you were referring to, Jose Luis, well, yes, security, legal matters, and some infrastructure that can't be done at the local level, period.
period.
And that would be 5% of the GDP, not 45%. They impose confiscatory taxes, making us in Catalonia work until August 24th just to pay them. It's about the same in the rest of Spain, even for public professionals.
And with real public professionals leading that small and minimal state, not with a gang of politicians. Pilar, Albert, they were saying the other day, because I agree with Pilar about what she said about your show, Albert. I mean, why do shows like this bother them so much, Albert? Because here we are engaging in healthy and legitimate criticism. That's what it's about. That's what thinking is, exercising healthy and legitimate criticism. But what do they want us to do? Do they want us to applaud when we see our country burning from all sides? What are they trying to do? What kind of society are they trying to build? Yes, they should, Albert, they should. If I were a political leader, what I would ask for is more programs like Albert's. A lot of criticism so we can learn, a lot of criticism so we can compare perspectives, improve, and make better decisions in the future.
These days, since we started speaking out about what we've been reporting on the fires, we've had a lot of problems. And me, after an interview that's waiting for us, there are a couple of listeners who tell me that the channels get cut off, the channels go down to 0. Things are happening that harm us, and it's not a coincidence. There are bots, there are all kinds of attacks because this message you're sharing here is one they don't want you to share. And I think it's shocking. But we've never been more at risk than we are now. That's what they tell me. And it's possible. I hope to still be here tomorrow and be able to tell you what we think. And if there's anyone who disagrees, I'll read their message here like I always do. But if I'm not here, they'll look for us and we'll find a way to show up. I don't know how, but we'll show up to keep telling you because it's important. Well, I don't like to talk about myself or about the show because this is a public service program, even though we don't accept public money, which is what we talk about here every day. Individual freedom and personal responsibility without waiting for handouts. That's what we've been practicing here for 4 years. Fernanda has a daughter who the other day had a conversation with a man, a Chinese citizen. Listen.
A conversation my daughter had just a few years ago with a Chinese man. So the Chinese man told her that he didn't understand how there was so much countryside in Spain. That in China, the land is used to build factories. He asked why in Spain, instead of having so much countryside, they didn't build factories. He said, with all the land and countryside you have, why don't you build factories? He said, Spain could have millions of factories. That's what the Chinese man told him. And then my daughter answered him. She said, well, nature is beautiful. We like nature here, the countryside, the animals. He said, that's worthless. What matters is work.
Pilar, apparently this Chinese guy set up a photovoltaic plant some years later. These are very different ways of thinking.
It's not like they're incompatible either. Notice that in what we call depopulated Spain. I've been reading lately that Elon Musk and others like him are looking at it with greedy eyes. Well, to also set up data storage centers or energy production facilities of various types, I would love it if in an area where there's nothing, Google or one of those companies could set up an important data center, a data center that doesn't harm the environment. It can easily be done underground, and that's where it's usually done. What's the problem? That area would be much better taken care of. Like Rancaño said earlier, where there are people, there are no fires. What a coincidence. There wouldn't be any fires.
I think, Albert, Pilar, that we're going to have to go back to the villages to start a new process of reconquest like our ancestors did. Yes, because we're in a battle, we're in a relentless battle. We're in a battle, we're in a silent war, in a war where the clashes between the different sides aren't broadcast. But we're in bad times for freedom. And as she would say, yes.
Sir?
These are bad times for freedom, bad times for thought. Anyway, to all these damn totalitarians, I can assure them, yes.
Sir, I'm going to vote for you.
Rancaño.
I can assure you, Albert and Pilar and all these totalitarians, that they are going to lose the war. They don't stand a chance, not even against millions of free men, but against a single free man, against just one. Now imagine them against millions.
We're going to the newsroom. Susana Gas, latest messages.
We're still here, Albert, in the newsroom of Castellon Confidential. Greetings to everyone. We're receiving and reading all the messages from our insiders. We've got one from Victor. He says that, well, there is a network of local, regional, and also national politicians who take a commission for the rezoning of those lands. Carmen says that we should ban the installation of wind and solar parks in areas that were burned up to 25 years earlier due to suspicion of environmental crimes. We must not forget, she says. Francesca, I congratulate you on yesterday's editorial. Bureaucracy and speculation are destroying rural areas so that some people can profit from devastated lands. Thank you for the program and for continuing to fight. Al Algarnata says that the UME is unnecessary. What we need to do is train ourselves, he comments. Real national forest firefighting units for such serious situations as these. Karen tells you that, as a friend and neighbor used to say, when you can do things that I can't do but you don't do them, and then bad things happen, they happen because of you. Tony also says that with so many solar panels and wind turbines, we end up paying a ridiculously high price for energy. How is Spain going to be competitive with anything if we pay twice as much? Rosa says that everything is very sad. We're all sad. But if we don't get rid of them, they'll probably get rid of us. Her team, Albert Castillon, plays a vital role. But we also have to disobey. It's only natural that when rural people are banned from clearing the land, they obey and end up allowing the worst catastrophe of their lives. Is it mandatory to obey? No. We are facing a society that lets itself be killed, and that's unnatural. And here, with this phrase from our friend, we'll leave it. Follow us on social media to stay informed. Thank you, Albert.
Thank you very much. Friends, the fires are still out of control, and this isn't the first year. This is a plan from years ago that we're now living through. Pilar, since you're a biologist, how long does it take for a forest area to recover? I'm not talking about grass. For a forest, it's decades, right?
Normally it's 50 years, but that's another key point you've touched on. Because the Mediterranean forest is usually replanted first with pines, and under the pines you start putting the quercus, right? Quercosilex, different types of quercus. When they start growing, the pine is removed. Here, we're not doing that. They plant pine, which is highly flammable, and that's it. I mean, we've known this forever. People from the countryside know it. Any biologist, any agricultural engineer, anyone who goes online knows it. It's not being done. That's why it's not being done on purpose. It's not being done on purpose.
Final message, Rancaguino. Look, Rancano.
The final message I would tell all my fellow countrymen who are having a hard time. And to those who are not having a hard time, who have a good heart and are good people and are seeing that others are struggling, it will pass. But they shouldn't give in to a tantrum. They have the right to have it. Let them have their tantrum, their suffering, whatever is necessary. But imagine, immediately afterwards, we must abandon apathy and become enthusiastic activists. Enthusiastic activists, even if they are individualists. If we are not able to organize ourselves in a more effective way, even if it's on our own, but we have to be enthusiastic activists. We have to start fighting to change things. And the only way, Albert, the only way is by taking back what we have given to the state. We have to take it away from them.
We agree. Friends, it has been a pleasure having you here. You have surpassed yesterday's show, just so you know. Congratulations. Pilar from Madrid, Jose Luis Rancagüe, big hug.
Hello, farewell, Pilar.
Every day with better collaborators, there's no better way to stay informed than by listening to them here every day. Well, I have someone, a confidential source, who has asked for help because the police force called Marlaska's Police exists in Madrid. They fined his wife 1,200 euros for organizing a gathering that she not only didn't organize, but she didn't even participate in it.
593, 9,159,304.91. Completely trustworthy.
Gentlemen, for some time now we've been receiving complaints on the show about what has come to be called Marlaska's Police. They are a group of national police officers in Madrid under the orders of the government delegate of Madrid who attend protests against Sanchez's government. And with an unusual fondness for checking IDs, and by checking who is who and writing down every number, those people who attend a protest end up receiving fines of more than 1,000 euros. It's a way to harass, to prevent people from protesting, to make them think twice about going out into the street. They did it to those who protested in Ferraz or not long ago, just a few months back, with what you're about to see, what happened. Thank you all.
Thank you. Are you seriously asking for a law?
Are you asking for a law?
This was a gathering in front of the European Economic Community offices in Madrid on Paseo de la Castellana. As you can see, there are more police officers than protesters. They wear the Spanish flag around their necks. They were protesting against amnesty and pardons and how Europe could be involved in this. They were asking for ID. From all those people you see there, they took down document numbers and full names. One of the women who confronted him later spoke to the press, the few media outlets that were there. No.
I think this is outrageous that I can't even be in Spain, in my city, with the Spanish flag and with a group of people who came here to protest against this amnesty, which I find outrageous. And she says that it's been prohibited and that they ask us for our ID. And she says I'm going to get a fine or something like that sent to my house.
That incident went even further. Juan and Margarita, a married couple who were walking in the area, have contacted the program. They were not participating in the demonstration. They stood watching to see what would happen. They were both asked for their IDs, and she has been accused and convicted not only for participating, no. They say she was the organizer of the event. Stay with us. The story is incredible and surprising. Her husband, Juan Chavez. How are you? How are you, Juan?
Well, I'm angry, pissed off, generally with everyone. There is one person who did help you, who is a journalist, a friend of mine, Alejandra Ayosa.
She is working for one of the POW organizations.
That's good. She's angry. She did go to testify in your favor. They have asked him to give us the world. Let's listen to her.
We went to Paseo de la Castellana in front of the European Parliament to express our outrage at the amnesty. We had been called there by various groups led by well-known public figures, and we decided that at that time, 8 in the evening, it was certainly not a harassment protest or anything like that. It was a demonstration of our discontent. I went on behalf of España Cívica, and when we got there, we suddenly saw that there were more police officers than protesters. No one called off the protest. The police themselves explained to us that we weren't authorized, to our surprise, and they even asked us for our ID. We talked with them, and I insist in less than 15 minutes we were all out. After some time, Margarita receives a fine, and it turns out they say she's the main instigator of everything. Since I was a witness to what happened, I went to the trial. There, it was implied that she had been the main organizer. I explained that as the press officer for Foro España Cívica, I was in contact with many organizations. I knew who was who, and that Margarita was not someone who belonged to that organization. They told me that maybe she wasn't the well-known face, but she was the lieutenant. But nothing happened at all. We all just went home. And besides, we were talking cordially with the police about what she was being accused of. I don't understand why they were so fixated on her.
Alejandra is surprised by the judge's attitude in this story, because if the government delegation or that so-called Marlaska police have an agenda, that's what judges are for, to deliver justice. They haven't done that with your wife, right?
No, they wouldn't even let my wife defend herself. Our lawyer was stunned because they wouldn't let him speak either. That was, let's say, in my opinion, everything was already planned. I mean, he had to be punished as a warning so that people wouldn't even come close. But we had nothing to do with the protest. In fact, let's say the presumption of innocence is nullified by the police's testimony without even considering that the police can make mistakes. I mean, with all the evidence we had, the videos that the journalist Alejandra gave us, she treated us really well, and I didn't even know she belonged to one of those groups. I mean, she did it on her own initiative, and she helped us. We also published, for example,
the police said that the event took place at 6:30 and she was the organizer. Your wife was teaching a class at 6:30. She wasn't there?
She wasn't there. She wasn't there.
Your wife isn't active on social media? Nothing?
Not at all.
She's not part of any association. Look, to me, looking at the case, it seems like they just wanted to pin the blame on someone, and it happened to be your wife, but it could have been anyone, right? What penalty did she receive? What did your wife have to pay?
Well, look, she had to pay 1,200 for the fine plus the court costs plus other expenses. I think it's the court costs, right? But yes, we had to pay the court representative. The lawyer is a friend of ours who stayed with us, who helped us and didn't charge us. But it's already cost quite a bit. And she's self-employed, a small business owner who's going through, like all the self-employed people in Spain, the problems that everyone's facing. I mean, it's surreal. It's surreal.
My wife is, they tell me, a mining engineer, a businesswoman, self-employed, nothing to do with any of this, nothing. She's sitting on a bench waiting to see what happens. And they say she's the organizer of everything, and they've hit her with more than 1,200 euros. And where is the justice here?
Justice isn't here. We believed in Spanish justice. But in the end, it's very clear that there are, I'm not saying all the judges or the whole administration, but there are some who look the other way. And I'm not saying they're committing misconduct, but they look the other way. And I think even with a bit of fear, that is, they're not able to face something so as surreal as what happened to us. Listen, I'm going to say something to me. Tell me.
To me?
They gave me the documents. And I told him that if he justified it to me, I would give it to him. Do you know what they did? They left because they knew they'd have to arrest me and couldn't justify their actions. Do I make myself clear? That is to say, yes.
But that's all. It's not the first time this has happened. But it's an example of something surreal. Pardon me. At that gathering, there were only a handful of people. There were more police officers than protesters. There were no shouts. They didn't break anything. They didn't block traffic because they couldn't. There were too few of them. They use you as an example. They go straight in, coordinated with each other. You get the impression that the police, the government delegation, and some judges like the one you got are coordinated to make an example of you.
Well, I would add the state attorney, who didn't do anything either. I mean, we had such strong guarantees, like a police force that didn't show up to testify and didn't challenge the evidence. I mean, a judge who didn't let my lawyer or me speak and even asked what interest the Televisión Española journalist had in going there. And she told my wife to be quiet, that she couldn't speak. She kept her quiet at the end of the room the whole time. She couldn't defend herself at all. So how am I going to do it? I'm 63 years old. I'm almost retired. How am I supposed to think at this point that justice doesn't exist in Spain? Let me explain what I'm saying. How? We have nothing to do with politics. Well, we wouldn't even think of approaching a group anymore. Whether it's a protest or not, we'll run away. Why? Because we don't want the same thing to happen to us again. Exactly.
But this is typical of dictatorships. This is what happens in Venezuela. We thought that this didn't happen here. And it's not news. It doesn't appear on the front page of the media, but this is an abuse prepared and coordinated so that no one protests against the government unless they allow it. It's very serious. To me, it seems like an extremely serious move. How is your wife?
She has already gotten over it, but the first few days she couldn't sleep. Her father was in the military, and she has always had respect for institutions and all that. Honestly, it's not that she lost it, but she no longer trusts institutions. Because given what we've seen at the level we're at, excuse me, but we're like ants, we're nothing. Imagine what it's like at other levels. What could be happening? Am I making myself clear or not? No.
Yes, you're explaining yourself very clearly. We once believed that all the police, all the state attorneys, and all the judges were there to deliver justice. And we see that not all of them are. Juan, thank you for sharing your story. It's an example of what many people tell me is happening to them. It's a quiet way of punishing people so that no one goes out into the streets to protest against the government. We think it's a brutal loss of rights. And about your wife, I don't know if you've been able to appeal. If not, no, she doesn't have no.
She has no legal recourse.
It's not possible?
It's not possible.
I mean, put it out.
Just lower your head and that's it. No, and well, the frustration of saying, well, we've spent our whole lives paying taxes religiously. Do you understand what I'm saying? And suddenly seeing that all of that is worthless because at this level we can't even defend ourselves. I say, well, what am I here for? Why have I worked so many years? For what? To carry this frustration and this. Honestly, if we had a different temperament, if we were made differently, we'd be insulting, shouting, breaking things, really. But no, what we've done is make ourselves small, stay quiet. And thank goodness that you, Alberto or Alejandra Ayuso or Galeacho.
Because Galeacho has also helped us. Galeacho wrote.
At first he wrote one of those, but not much more. That's about it.
Give Margarita a hug. Juan, don't lose faith in Spain. Yes, lose faith in this government and its tentacles. They're extremely dangerous. We've been saying it for a while.
In the end, money is money. I mean, that's not what hurts us the most. Of course. It's that they didn't even let us defend ourselves. We could have just paid 600 euros up front and been done. Let me explain. But she wasn't there. My wife had the pride to defend herself, her dignity, and her... Yes.
I understand you perfectly. Thank you for sharing, Juan, and a big hug. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alberto.
By the way, don't miss the interview Susana did with Begoña Gerpe on Confesiones Confidenciales. She talks about Zapatero as a lawyer. She has very interesting points of view. You can't miss it. Look for that exclusive interview with our friend, with Begoña Gerpe, on our sister channel Confesiones Confidenciales, who's always very interesting. Well, and thank you very much, Byron, for your words.
Let's thank him for the magnificent videos he's making, and especially the topics he's bringing up, sharing them with his listeners and so on. I try not to go a single day without watching at least one of his videos, even if it's just one.
Thank you very much. I know you can't always watch everything. One thing I tell you that you could do, and you're free to do it, is now that you'll have more time in the summer, rewatch old videos or interviews. Look at the interviews and editorials. We put them on the second channel, Confidenciales Castellón. That's it, just that. And the talk shows and everything else here. We're delighted you watch whenever you can, and we're always grateful. By the way, Rosa Maria, besides watching us, senses things. Let's see what you think.
Well, I don't know why Leticia is always trying to get on Sanchez's right to stay close to him. She's closer to Sanchez than to her own husband. If they can't get along, she should just get a divorce like everyone else. I mean, these are things where honestly a picture is worth 1,000 words.
I'm not adding anything, but what Rosa Maria says is true. There's always that gesture of closeness, of affection from Leticia towards Sánchez. I don't know. Well, Pablo is on vacation in Estonia. Thank you, Pablo, for the photo. He sent us this picture with the Spanish flag in Estonia. Send us photos of your vacations because in August we'll be here almost every day. So we'll keep showing them. And Julio has a theory about who is burning the forest. Listen.
They have already found the arsonist who has caused so many fires in the community of Madrid and the surrounding areas. They say it's the same person who let thousands of hectares burn last year. The police have already located him. They've given him the nickname the King of Climate Change. But they say they still can't arrest him since he's hiding at the Moncloa Palace.
Who could it be, right? Well, the online store. By the way, thank you so much because things are starting to sell. Merchandise from the show, especially the caps. The Make Spain Great Again one in Spanish or in English, like the one Ferran, our world champion, was wearing. We have both versions, so everyone can choose. There are a lot of people who ask for one of each. We're happy to do it. Happy to do it. Remember that it will take us a month to send them because they're being made in a hurry right now. Thank you very much. Both Lola and Jose warn us that they're boycotting us. Friends, listen to Lola.
This morning we tried to put on the show and you were nowhere to be found. And we went to subscriptions and you weren't there. So they unsubscribed us from the show and we had to subscribe again. Those are two things. One, that you've hit them where it hurts. And another, be careful because these people are dangerous.
Yeah, after the hacks and the threats, now they're coming in through the back door. Now they're messing things up. Jose tells me more.
They're sabotaging your channel, okay? Today I went crazy. And he would pick up the phone. Suddenly you were talking and boom. The screen would go black or ads would pop up that lasted who knows how long. You go back and boom, it'd happen again. You'd reset, you'd start over. And you'd start from the beginning again. I mean, they're sabotaging you in every possible way.
Thank you, Jose. Thank you, Lola. We know it's happening. We've complained to YouTube because we don't understand why it works so badly. Well, maybe we do understand. Look, this isn't an easy show. Here we don't make jokes. We don't just do interviews and leave. Here we uncover things that no one else has published. Just yesterday afternoon at noon, we published a video that's still up where we explain who supposedly really owns Zapatero's jewels. A week ago, we told you who the real owner of Plus Ultra is. Here we go one step further. And that's what they can't stand, that we question the official version or that they'd love for us to be wild conspiracy theorists. No, look, we know it's not easy. That's why we value it twice as much every time one of you shares the channel or gets someone else involved. Because with all the obstacles they put in our way in just 4 years, we've only been here for 4 years and they're already coming after us. The way to maintain freedom of information and the press is for you to help relay what we say here. I always say it, take whatever part of the program you want, distribute it, cut it, paste it. As long as you don't change the meaning of the sentence, do whatever you want. And that way people will understand that we exist. We're already approaching 350,000 followers and they can't stand that. Proy Lannister. I've really liked it. Several friends have sent it to me. The show Mañaneros, the one with Javier Ruiz, they call it Pesebreros, which I think is much more fitting. Take a look.
Today on Pesebreros, we've contacted several completely neutral wildland firefighters with no political affiliation whatsoever, who will explain to us in great detail the reasons why Ayuso is a fascist. First of all, let's go to Pablo, who will talk to us during one of his breaks from fighting the fire.
Hello, Javierito. I've been a firefighter all my life, and I can explain to you exactly what's going on.
Pablo, tell us first of all, are you at the fire's epicenter now?
Eshanik dressed as a firefighter in a wheelchair.
About what Ayuso is doing?
Yes, Javierito. I'm taking a break from my entire life and my job as a firefighter. The situation is dramatic, I won't lie, and it's all due to climate change, which is Ayuso's fault. I also want to denounce Ayuso's truck phobia, which prevents me from identifying as a fire truck, which is how I feel. She says I can't carry people or spray water, that fascist.
But what you're telling us is terrible. Besides being responsible for climate change, Ayuso is making it harder for you to be considered a fire truck. Did I get that right?
Sorry, Javierito. I have to hang up. This is hard for me.
Judge for yourselves, dear progressive viewers. If this doesn't prove Ayuso's fascism, then nothing can. Let's go to Jose Luis. Jose Luis, are you a firefighter?
Well, Javierito, if I'm not a firefighter, what am I doing with such a hose?
Well, of course. Thank you very much, Jose Luis, for helping us expose what Ayuso is causing. Let's move on to the next one.
Hi, I'm a firefighter on leave. That is, a dummy. I'm here to report
Monica Garcia.
Ayuso because I know for a fact she's part of a conspiracy to destroy all the forests in Madrid.
Yes, it's clear. I've seen it from the start too, Javier, in my sexy cutie, Antolala.
He claims Ayuso is conspiring to destroy all Madrid's forests. This was predictable. Please tell us, anonymous firefighter.
That's right. I'm absolutely certain, thanks to my deep knowledge and firefighting experience, that Ayuso is burning the forests herself so that Quirón can build hospitals in the burned areas.
Without a doubt, a devastating testimony. The evidence against Ayuso is overwhelming, and all we can do from here is firmly condemn her unequivocal fascism. Wait, it looks like there's another testimony. Go ahead. Let's see.
I'm a political prisoner. In this country, that's looked down upon even more than stealing. Freedom for political firefighters.
Abalos says, why do you think my host is so well? Friends, I'll see you tomorrow. I'll be waiting for you in the trenches. Thank you for being there.
Tú lo sabes y yo lo sé. Somos confidenciales. Tú eres confidencial. Yo soy confidencial. Todos confidenciales. Todos confidenciales. Pero solo para mentes abiertas y para gente despierta. Desde la trinchera las balas silban y no hay manera de salir allá afuera. Aquí la libertad tiene las alas de cera. Albert Castillo, Susana Gash, Tucci Castillo y demás. Muchas gracias. Con esto y un bizcocho. Hasta mañana a las 8.
Castillón Confidencial, de Albert Castillón.